Hello and welcome to episode 96 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. On today's show, Marissa from Chicago will be back to continue our conversation on childless Disney adults. We started the talk last week, but now we're going to delve a little deeper into why the stereotype exists in the first place. Before that, my friend Scott Kumpka is going to be here to share his story about riding every ride at Disneyland Resort. That's both Disneyland Park and Disney's California Adventure in one day back in September. Coming up this Wednesday, December 7th, Scott is going to make another run at riding every ride at Walt Disney World in one day. That means he has to complete Magic Kingdom, Epcot, Disney's Hollywood Studios, and Disney's Animal Kingdom. He's doing this to raise money for the organization Give Kids the World. Before we get started, do me a favor and subscribe to the Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty YouTube channel. All this holiday season, we will have videos of holiday decorations from all over Walt Disney World and other destinations in Florida. Make sure you are subscribed to see all of them. We're looking to hit 500 subscribers by the end of the year. Let's get things going by welcoming my friend Scott Kumpka to the show. Thanks for being here, Scott.
Hey, welcome.
So we're going to be talking about those every ride challenges in just a few minutes. But before that, you went up this past weekend to Walt Disney World and the Orlando area, and you got to experience two holiday events that I know a lot of people are interested in discussing and hearing some of the details. One of them is that you once again attended Night of a Million Lights to raise money for Give Kids the World Village. And I did this last year. I haven't gotten up there yet. This year, I'm hoping to get the chance to do it. How did you like it? Was it different than past years?
There are things that are the same, but there's one gigantic difference, and that is that it is not at the Give the Kids the World Village this year. It is at Island H2O. It's over by Margaritaville on 192. It's the water park next to Margaritaville.
So how is it different going to the different venue? I know going last year, it was really hard to park, and then you have to take a shuttle, and there was a lot of difficulty in that. I'm assuming having it somewhere else might make that a little easier on the transportation aspect.
The parking was a lot easier because there's gigantic parking lots next to both Margaritaville, and there's like some sort of shopping district right next to that park too. So there was parking all over the place, and it's all within walking distance. The park itself is probably maybe a quarter of the size of what the village is. So there wasn't as much area to display stuff. Plus, like the lights were all on houses before. Now there was like some light trails, and then they put lights up on a couple of the slides.
But I know one of the awkward things when it was at Give Kids the World Village was there would be families staying in some of these houses, and you're trying to take pictures of all the lights, and you're trying to enjoy this while people are going in and out after their theme park day. So it might be a little less awkward to do it this way as well.
Yeah, because this year they have full capacity. From what I've heard from the people that run it, is that they are at full capacity at this point. A lot of the limitations that Make-A-Wish and some of the other organizations that they work with have all been dropped. So all these families that haven't been able to do it in the last 2-3 years are all starting to come and get their wishes granted.
That makes a whole lot of sense because of everything that happened with the pandemic. You also got to check out the first weekend of Epcot's International Festival of the Holidays. I'm going to be checking it out this upcoming weekend. What were some of the events you got to see for Festival of the Holidays?
Okay, I was only there for a couple hours. The first thing, even though I guess technically it's part of the Festival of the Holidays, I went up there to hear the new song on the Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind. I guess the song's recorded specifically for the attraction, which honestly, I didn't really like it. You're going to get the exact same song no matter when you ride. It's going to be for like the next month. So you don't get the like 6 rotating songs that you get during the normal ride. I was kind of hoping it would be, I don't know if you've seen the holiday special on Disney Plus that they did for Guardians of the Galaxy. There are a couple songs in that would have been better than what they use.
You got to see some of the performances as well, right?
Most of the stuff I watch, stuff that they have on a yearly basis. Nothing really new, but in the Norwegian pavilion, they do what they call the Barn Santa. The Japan pavilion, I saw the Daruma Cellar, which is a little doll with two blanked out eyes that you make a wish on, and you fill in one of the eyes, and once the wish is fulfilled, you fill in the other eye. Then the one I do every single time I try to go is go see Father Christmas at the UK pavilion.
Awesome. Like you said, it is really hard sometimes to get to experience all this stuff at Festival of the Holidays because it is a really, really short festival. So it's kind of good that some of the same things keep returning each and every year because I never have the chance to see all of the different performers every year because the festival only runs for like a month.
Or the other thing, like I was there fairly late in the day, so a lot of the performers end at like 3, 4 o'clock. So a lot of the performers are more in the early part of the day. So I didn't get to see everyone come out.
Absolutely. That's why this weekend I want to make sure we get up there nice and early so I can see as many of them as possible. So now I want to turn things over to your Every Ride challenges. You have 2 of them coming up next week. But before we get to that, I want to talk about one you completed recently over at Disneyland because this is very unique. You've completed them before at Walt Disney World. I think your first one was the day Galaxy's Edge opened at Walt Disney World. And now you've gone to the other coast. What was it like trying to complete the Every Ride challenge at Disneyland? Where was it different than trying to do it at Walt Disney World? And where did it feel kind of the same?
The same as you always have the time constraints. The biggest difference is Disney World is spread out across twice the size of Manhattan, whereas Disneyland, the 2 parks are literally facing each other. It's like less than a city block between the 2. They still have the same problem that Disney World has right now, where you are limited on when you can park hop. Disneyland's a little better because you can park hop at 1, where at Disney World, you can't do it until 2. When I went out to California, I was there for about 10 days because I was there for the D23 Expo. That's why I was really going out there. I got a 3-day ticket. I went first day, walked around Disneyland doing anything, any of the attraction shows that are not duplicated here in Florida because you want to experience the California parts.
Absolutely. You got to do Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. You have to do the Indiana Jones ride. Correct.
Yep. And unfortunately, I didn't get to do the Matterhorn because the Matterhorn was under refurbishment while I was out there. So that's one of the rides I didn't get to do. And I didn't get to do the Roger Rabbit Dark Ride because Toontown is still under construction right now.
And just so anybody knows, when Scott does one of these Every Ride challenges, the only rides that count are rides that are open that day and are welcoming guests.
I actually tried the challenge twice. The first, I decided I have enough time. I'm going to try to do this. The first time I did it, I started at DCA, and we were able to complete almost all of DCA that day, except for the Inside Out Emotional Whirlwind, because it broke down halfway through the day and it never reopened.
But then you did complete it later in the week. So what was it like to finally complete this challenge?
It was interesting because we decided to do it. It was the Disney Plus day, which meant a lot of the cast members didn't know, but basically there was a hotel early entry people. And then if you could prove you were a Disney Plus subscriber, which the cast members had no idea how you would prove this, you had to go in about half an hour before the rest of the park. Hotel guests got to start at 7 in the morning. The official opening was 8. The Disney Plus thing, they let us in at 7:30. So like the start of the challenge, we were planning on doing Peter Pan first because Peter Pan is one of those rides that gets incredibly long lines at Disneyland. I mean, it happens here in Florida too, but it's even worse out there.
And at Disneyland, they don't have Fast Pass for it or Genie Plus.
The only Fantasyland one that I think had a Genie Plus was It's a Small World. I think everything else is just standby only.
So everybody rushes to get to Peter Pan first. It is the big rope drop ride at Disneyland because it doesn't have Genie Plus or Lightning Lane or anything like that. So to ride it, you're gonna have to wait in the queue. So everybody tries to rope drop it so they can cut that down as much as possible.
And unfortunately, because the hotel guests all got to go in first, by the time they let us in, just literally 30 minutes later, it was already like a 45-minute or more wait. And that was our first call to change. We went to Dumbo first because Dumbo's a really slow loading ride. We did the slow loaders, Dumbo, the carousel.
And at that time of the morning, nobody's going on those rides. So that's one of the advantages.
Right. Yes. We ended up buying 2 individual Lightning Lanes. One was for Rise of the Resistance. Then later in the day when we got to DCA, Radiator Springs Racers closed down. We were watching it all day in the app, just trying to see, does it come up? Does it come up? We were on, I don't remember what ride we were on, but by the time we got off whatever ride we were on, the line for Radiator Springs was already 2 hours. So we're like, we kind of got in line. We're looking, because sometimes Disney fudges the numbers where you're looking at the line. It's like, is this actually 2 hours or did they just fudge the numbers? And we're like sitting there and we're like, nope, we're going to pay the $15 because we only had about 2 hours left at the end of the night. And we had 3 rides left at Disneyland. So we need to make sure we had enough time to do those 3 rides and Radiator Springs.
Radiator Springs Racers uses a similar ride system to Test Track in Walt Disney World, which, like Test Track in Walt Disney World, can tend to go down every once in a while, a few times throughout the course of the day. It doesn't do it as much as Disney World because of the rain, which will close Test Track at Epcot, but Radiator Springs Racers is always one that if you can rope drop it, I suggest rope dropping it, but it's also much, much better at night. So if you can do it at night again, that's always good as well. So now you're doing the Every Ride Challenge at Walt Disney World coming up next week. You're doing this to raise money for Give Kids the World. Am I correct?
Yes.
And what are you going to be doing? When are you there? And when are you going to be trying these runs?
In my case, it's going to be on Wednesday, December 7th. And then we're also trying it again on Saturday, December 10th. We're doing 2 days because we want to have as many people as possible to try to come out. Anyone that wants to can sign up for this at everyridechallenge.com up to 24 hours before the challenge starts.
So I'm always interested in the strategy of these things, and you're sitting here now the week before this is going to happen. What is your planned first park for Wednesday?
Right now, I am planned for Epcot because that's where I can get reservations. But I picked that because the Magic Kingdom actually has extended magic hours for if you're staying in a deluxe resort. I wasn't planning on staying in a deluxe resort, but like 4 or 5 of us have decided we all got a room that we're splitting just for that one, just to get the extra magic hours.
That makes a lot of sense. So you can start at Epcot. You can try to get the boarding group.
Yeah, try to get the boarding group for Guardians and try to rope drop Remy because those are the 2 rides that get the longest lines. On average, I can complete it in 3 to 4 hours is my average for Epcot, usually around 3, mostly because of the length of the rides. Epcot does have some of the longer rides in the parks, like Living with the Land and Imagination. They're fairly long rides. But there are people, anyone else can do this. We are looking for people to offer side challenges for us, like say $5 to sing a song in a certain spot or make a silly pose somewhere. Like my personal one for the other teams right now is get a picture with Santa because it is the holiday season.
And that can get to be a long wait, right?
Right. It's always something that's slightly challenging to do, especially in the middle of the run. There were points in the years past where someone offered $500 to do the drawing class in the middle of the challenge. And I was actually, at the time, I was actually able to do that during one of my completions.
And then where are you planning on starting on Saturday?
Saturday, I haven't decided yet. Most likely, I'm going to do what they call the points challenge because it is shorter hours on Saturday. The points challenge is you don't have to complete every ride, but certain rides are worth more points than others. And like the Magic Kingdom, you get the most points if you complete the Magic Kingdom because there are like double the amount of rides in the Magic Kingdom compared to the other 3 parks. Most likely try to start at the Magic Kingdom that day. Probably my goal.
Awesome. So if people want to contribute, want to donate, or if they want to give you a challenge on the day you're doing this run, how can they do that?
Right now, I think there is for the side challenges. I believe there is a link on the everyridechallenge.com site. I think there's a donation QR code on there right now for a group, or I do have my own URL that it still goes to the same to the Give Kids the World to the same place, but mine is just give.gktw.org/Scott Kumka, SCOTTKUMKA.
give.gktw.org/Scott Kumka, and that's SCOTTKUMKA.
Yeah, and generally when we do these challenges, I will have if you're following me, everyone's generally posts the pictures on Twitter as long as Twitter is still around. I'm sure I'm probably going to try to do some on Facebook and Instagram.
If I'm not mistaken, you have to take this selfie as you're starting the ride. That's how it gets registered.
You don't have to necessarily take it at the beginning of the ride, but most people do try to take it at the beginning of the ride. Some rides, it's easier to do that. Some rides are actually easier to take the picture during the ride or at the end of the ride. You just have to make sure you actually take the picture on the ride, because almost everyone that's done this challenge has made the mistake of waiting in line, getting on the ride, and then realizing you forgot to take a picture.
And you got to do it all over again then.
The one that I know I personally had that problem with was the Seas with Nemo is one I missed like that. At least I realized before I got too far away from it, I didn't take a picture on that ride. So at least it's not that hard of a ride to re-ride. It takes up a lot of time when you have to re-ride something like that, but
absolutely. This is such a great cause, and it is such a fun way to try to raise money for it. So thank you so much for trying to do good things, and thank you so much for being on the show.
Yep, thank you.
Now let's welcome Marissa back to the show. In episode 95, we started talking about childless Disney adults, and we covered why we both fit into that category. Marissa, what are some of the negative attributes that you feel have led to Disney adults getting a bad reputation?
Entitlement. That's a huge one. I see a lot of Disney adults pull I've been visiting here for 26 years and I've never had to make a reservation. So now why are you making me make a reservation? I should just be able to walk up and sit here. I'm in the parks every other week and I've never had to do this. And I see people get slammed for that a lot, and I think rightly so, because they're trying to manipulate people into letting them blatantly disregard the rules. And it's just very bizarre behavior to me.
When the parks reopened back in 2020, I stayed the first 4 days at Saratoga Springs so that I could get 4 park reservations so that I could do each of the 4 parks and stay up there. And I had to go up to the lobby to get my magic bands. So while I was going up to the lobby to get my magic band, the woman in front of me was yelling at the cast member at Saratoga Springs because in Magic Kingdom that day, every 15 minutes, they made the announcement about COVID and trying to stay safe and washing your hands. It wasn't even anybody who was there when they were making those announcements every 15 or 20 minutes. It wasn't even that much of an intrusion. It was just saying, wash your hands, which basically, if you people would do that in the first place, there never would have been the need to make the announcement. However you felt about the pandemic precautions at Disney, the one thing you have to understand is they wouldn't have been allowed to reopen if they didn't have some of them. Even in Florida, where the rules were some of the most lax in the country about reopening things, they still had guidelines for it. Disneyland didn't open for almost another year after we were standing there, and she was complaining that there was an announcement. That was the whole thing. Oh, there aren't bathrooms in Liberty Square because it's part of the timeline, but you're going to have these announcements about a pandemic. Listen, you get to be in Liberty Square. There's literally nobody in the parks right now. You have 5-10 minute waits for everything, and you're complaining about an announcement. And I hear you 100%. I think another thing that a lot of Disney adults do that give us a bad reputation is expect or almost play games to try to get magic moments or pixie dust moments. They try to manipulate the system to try to get something special. And when somebody else gets something special, then they get a little bit upset.
Yes, this is such a huge problem. And I see, Facebook is what it is, but I see people complain on there all the time. And it's, 3 weeks ago, I saw that Jimmy got pixie dusted and upgraded to a 2-bedroom suite. And I just checked in at Riviera and I said that I'm celebrating my birthday and they didn't do anything for me. How unfair is that? It's like, well, all right, you booked a Tower Studio. You got a Tower Studio. Why are you upset? Pixie dust and magic moments are not guaranteed. The whole point of them is that they're supposed to be random surprises for random people. And now they're doing them less because so many people are being demanding about it that they feel like they can't give something to one person without having 7 people line up and say, well, why didn't I get this? Why did he get this, but I didn't? It's ridiculous.
And then all the people in those same Facebook groups trying to share different hacks to try to get those magic moments. The whole thing is really, really toxic and bad. Although I will say that I am still angry that you got upgraded to a club suite at Disney's Wilderness Lodge. And I still am going to try to figure out how you made that happen because dang it, I am so jealous of that.
You want to know the secret? The club wasn't open. It was before they opened the club lounge. So they didn't have the food out. But yeah, that was honestly just ridiculously magical. So very grateful for that. But again, that's not something I expect every trip. That's not something that happens. That's happened once out of how many trips? You just can't go into Disney with the mentality of I deserve special treatment.
I'm glad you mentioned some of these Facebook groups because I do think they are a problem, and it is not all of them, and it's not everybody in the Facebook groups. I just thought of this when you brought up the Facebook groups, but you had to have my back in one of them very recently because I said something that was 100% correct, and this was somebody kind of manipulating cast members. At least I feel that's what was happening. So, talking about a recent Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party, they were saying how it was upsetting because the price of Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party has continued to rise, which is true, but then said, and they're not giving the free Mickey bars and sodas anymore. But they never did that. The Mickey bars and sodas were part of last year's Boo Bash, which was a special after-hours event that cost more than Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party. And people were saying, no, but we asked the cast members why it didn't come back. Guess what? The cast members aren't allowed to disagree with you. The cast members can't do what Marissa and I did in that comment section, which was say, no, you're wrong. They were 2 completely different events because cast members can't say you're wrong. Then that makes people angry, and then they complain about the cast members. So you have them in this situation where they have to agree with you, and then you try to use that as ammunition. Yes, it's a semantic argument, but it was a different party, and there were things that you weren't getting last year so that you could get the free sodas and the free Mickey bars. But to put cast members in that tough situation of trying to ask them why this thing is happening, if your problem is with Bob Chapek or Josh D'Amaro or somebody at the top of Disney, that's not the cast members' fault.
Yep. Cast members have zero control over 99% of things that go on in the parks. They're not the ones setting the rules. They're not the ones setting the prices. This is not in their control. Do not take it out on them. And I know there are people, because I've seen it happen, who go up to the cast members and go, but it was free last year, so hoping the cast member will go, okay, then just take it this year. It's on Mickey. Congrats. It's like, stop trying to be manipulative. Stop it.
And we talk about this. I go a lot, and I can say that I am spoiled, and sometimes I feel spoiled for it. And I still get this stuff happening to me every once in a while. You'll go up and you'll want to buy a soda, and you'll be digging for your wallet, and they'll go, you know what? Just don't worry about it. Just, it's on Mickey. And one thing I have to program my mind better into doing is remembering that, because that was something super special. Or sometimes maybe you have a disability pass and they're like, just don't even worry about it, just go now, or whatever. Like, the cast members do so many little things that you don't even notice. Like, they are pixie dusting you something, but you didn't get a free cupcake, or you didn't get the thing you were thinking. If you just let the experience kind of come to you, you'll find out that you are being pixie dusted and you just didn't even notice it.
I completely agree. And one of the things that I would encourage people to do that I've done in the past, my friend and I, on our first trip back to Disney after college, we kept a running note on our phones we called it the little magics, of all the little things that happened to us at Disney, whether by complete random happenstance, like getting on a roller coaster just as the fireworks were going off, or something from a cast member, like getting a free Dole Whip, or just being congratulated when we were wearing our pins. And we had such a long list. And you know what? It's been years, and we'll still go back and go, oh, I was looking at the list today, and do you remember when this happened? And it's just such a great way to really keep in front of mind those little things that happen that are so wonderful.
I love that story so much, Marissa. Thank you so much for sharing it, because I think that is a great idea. And everybody who travels as like a trip should just try to do that the next time they go. This is your homework assignment from today's episode. The next time you go for multiple days, just try to write down every little magical moment that happened to you, and it will all of a sudden make price hikes and the park pass reservations and all of these things Genie Plus that may be bothering you. It'll actually show you that you are still getting a great experience. Before we go, I just want to talk about the things that us Disney adults, the childless Disney adults, I know I'm too old to be considered a millennial. I don't know if you're a millennial or not. I haven't really, you're on the border. Okay, what are the things that we can do to kind of dispel this misconception? We know a lot of really good childless and child-having Disney adults who do give us a good name if people pay attention. What are some of the things that you notice in that regard?
Oh my gosh. And I feel like this just comes back to kind of the core of what we've been talking about this whole time. But, you know, a lot of the people we know and associate with are good people. So that carries over into how they behave in the parks. They're kind people. They're courteous people. They're respectful people. They understand that cast members are working. They understand that they've got a difficult job. They're not going and demanding ridiculous requests from people. And I think that they have a positive impact on the people they're around in the parks because of it. And I think that's huge.
And Diz Twitter can be a dystopian nightmare. We talk about it sometimes. But when you are on Twitter, hashtag cast compliment at WDW Guest Services. You don't understand how much that can really mean to cast members. Not only that they feel like they are making a difference, but it can actually help them in their jobs. So if a cast member gives you a little pixie dust, or if you just enjoyed their smile and they made the 5 extra minute wait feel a little shorter because they were joking around with you, give them a cast compliment on Twitter. It does go a long, long way.
And now they actually have it built into the app as well, the My Disney Experience app. So you can make a cast compliment directly in the app if you don't use Twitter as often, or you don't want to go on Twitter and put the information out there. You can do it through your app or visit guest services. That's a great way to interact with another cast member and say, hey, I saw your coworker today and they did an excellent job. And that gets passed along to them as well.
I know back in Halloween season, I was doing Pluto's Pumpkin Pursuit in Epcot, and there were pumpkins spread throughout. It was a scavenger hunt that you had to find them. And the family figured out where all the pumpkins were located by process of elimination. So they were able to get their little prize at the end of the scavenger hunt. But I was looking for Wally and Eve, which were put in a really stupid location, by the way, Disney. But I was looking for it, and this woman came up to me and said, have you found them yet? I was like, no, I'm still looking around. I'm looking around. She's like, we went through, we got our prize, but our daughter really wants to see all of them. So I went into the store and I started going to the cast members. I'm like, all right, this is stupid, but this is not for me. There's a little girl. She wants to see all the pumpkins. Like, where is it? And they told me where it was. And then we went back, and just doing stuff like that and being a part of the guest experience, even if you go all of the time. I know sometimes the vacationers can be a little annoying to regulars because they're getting in the way, they're looking at their maps. But remember, they're having their once in a lifetime, once every 5-year vacation, and you get to go a lot more than them. So sometimes you can be part of what makes their vacation just a little bit better.
That's such a great point and such a great idea for, how we've been talking about cast members making magic, but it's a way for you to make magic as well and get in on that.
So many times we see mom or dad standing there with the cell phone getting ready to take the picture of 15 people in the family in front of the castle. Just offer to take the picture so they can all be in it. Yes, sometimes mom doesn't want to be in the picture because she's been sweating in the theme parks all day, and that's fine. But sometimes you go back home and you look at all these pictures and somebody's missing from all of them. So just offering to take that picture every once in a while. Those are the kind of things as Disney adults that I think if we start to do them more and more often, and I definitely think, like you said, less of a sense of entitlement, understanding that the parks kind of are there for families. That's the main audience, but we still get to enjoy them because of these families. So just keep that in mind and be mindful when you're there.
Absolutely. And I do think that there are a lot of Disney adults who are great people. Obviously, we've mentioned that. And I think that sometimes Disney adults get a bit of a bad rep because people think it's childish, or they think, oh my gosh, why would someone want to go back to Disney World as an adult? And it's like, well, you know what? I say this as a sports fan. Sports fans are equally as fanatic about their teams, or they're dishing out tons of money to go to games or maybe like playoff games. They've got memorabilia, they've got clothing. It doesn't really make a difference what you enjoy at the end of the day, as long as you find something you enjoy that doesn't hurt anyone. Don't yuck other people's yums in that sense. If they enjoy Disney and they're not hurting anyone, they're not hurting themselves, who cares? Let them enjoy it.
I've gone to baseball games and college football games in completely different parts of the country, gotten in my car, driven to them, big important games. Nobody said a word to me about it being childish. I lived in Arizona and Pearl Jam wasn't coming to Arizona on that tour, so I got in my car and I drove to Florida, ironically enough, and saw them in Jacksonville and Tampa. Drove over 2,000 miles to see concerts. Nobody said that was childish. But then I go to the theme parks and people think that's childish. We all have our forms of entertainment, and as long as you're being respectful and as long as you aren't causing problems, just enjoy it. It's not that big of a deal. And I think I'm going to close this by talking about going to see my favorite stand-up comedian. And she performed over at Universal at the Hard Rock there. And she made a joke about Disney adults because she saw some on the plane on her way to Orlando for that show. And she made the joke, and I was sitting there, and I literally went to Epcot before the show. So I felt a little attacked. And everybody laughed because I think there's probably a contingent of the Orlando community that is a little sick of all these Disney adults coming to town. But then I thought, we're at Universal. What makes this any better? Like, I know there's like a couple more roller coasters, but what really makes this that much different than Disney? It was just kind of funny to me. And I still enjoy this comedian very much. It didn't trigger me to the point that I don't follow her anymore, especially when you consider some of the things some of my old favorite comedians have done. But I just thought for a minute, like, it's such a weird reputation that you could be at Universal and make fun of Disney adults when it's obviously a room full of adults who have no problem going to theme parks.
It is funny because it is very much a Disney adult thing. And I do think there's an element of, I think it's important to have perspective and, not take yourself too seriously as a Disney adult and to say, like, yeah, all right, maybe you think it's a little childish, whatever, I like it. Or, oh, yeah, it's a little silly, I did this, this, and this today, and whatever. Being able to laugh at yourself in general is a good thing, but being able to not take it too seriously, I think, is important. And I think is kind of a good lesson to take from Disney as an entertainment conglomerate as well, that's built on, maybe not taking everything as seriously, adding a little whimsy to your lives. It's not a bad thing to have some whimsy there.
So having a little whimsy is definitely a good place to end this conversation. Marissa, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Next week, we have something extremely fun planned for you. Sarah Says will take on Marissa in Harry Potter trivia. I will be hosting the trivia contest, but the questions will be coming from Instagrammer The Sarah Enigma. You are not going to want to miss this episode. That will be next Thursday in episode 97 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Until then, have a great week.